The psychiatrist. I closed my eyes, ignoring the loud courtroom around me. Smacking of a woman in the back's gum chewing, fast typing of computer, closing and opening of doors in the back of the already full room. Clicking of photos being taken, yelling of lawyers arguing, banging of Judge Lewis's gavel hitting the hollow wooden desk. How did I get there? How did one misstep cause me to be the one standing there awaiting death or life imprisonment? No matter what I chose, it was the end for me. So couldn't I have given up instead of going down screaming? No, I couldn't have. Because that wasn't me. I heard the judge's raspy voice echo across the small courtroom. "Silence," he hollered. The whole room followed his instructions and went dead silent. "Miss Davis, I will ask once more." The judge sighed in a strained but steady voice. "How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty?" His voice faded slowly, like he was on edge. I paused, still holding my eyes securely shut. His strained, groggy voice gave me the feeling he was tired, angry, annoyed, and possibly sad. The way his jaw moved very gently and seemed clenched, even when he spoke, was a curious realization. Though when he did speak, normally, his voice was slow and dull, which was pretty normal for someone his age. But still, I knew something was wrong. He had a small wedding band on his right hand that was slightly rusted around the edges. Married for 30 years at least. He had bruises covered by a tattoo on the back of his same hand, which I noticed immediately after. It was new, practically 3 days old. Gone, but never forgotten. It read next to a small signature. I thought back more to the tattoo. JLJ, the signature read. Was it short for John Lewis Jr., the judge's son? The judge was grieving, not tired. He seemed so gloomy. I leaned my back against my chair, only to feel a soft vibration. So I listened. A uniformed officer behind me was tapping her foot on the floor quickly. Not normally, though. It was like she had somewhere to be. Nevertheless, it wasn't enough information to know for sure. Officer Howard had walked me in there, so I must have seen more. I remembered the way she walked, with a small limp on her left side. And when I asked her what courtroom we were going to, she responded angrily, like she was frustrated with a simple question. During the entire opening remarks, I kept hearing her heartbeat in the silence, and it was beating fast. But why was that? Was she nervous? Perhaps anxiety? No, that wouldn't explain the limp. That's it, I thought. Pain meds. She was taking them for her knee, but they were causing an addiction. She needed to see a doctor to get more. and that is why she was checking her watch so often. I took a deep breath to try and refocus on the judge's question, but I couldn't. I took a big whiff of my lawyer, Maxwell Hartley's cologne. It was strong, to say it best, but why was that? Other days, he'd come in with no smell, so why was today different? I pictured his frame leaning against the door in the hallway during our recess. He was a tall guy, 6'4", and his energy followed that. Every day, he came into work with a kind smile and a good morning for everyone. But he hadn't in a few weeks. He wasn't bad looking either, with his short, dark brown hair and even darker brown eyes. But alas, he wore a wedding ring when we first met. That was until a month ago when I noticed it off, and he never mentioned anything. I remembered back to the morning when he left abruptly at 10 o'clock on the dot and returned at exactly 10:15. Later, at around 1 o'clock, he did the same and came back at 1:15 again. Coincidence? No, nothing in our world is. So, what could he be doing that took 10 minutes? Immediately, a conversation I had with my therapist friend came up where she mentioned 15 minutes on the phone talking about common interests is an exercise for troubled couples. This means that Hartley was having marital problems. The judge coughed, and I jumped. I regained focus and slowly opened my sore eyes to adjust to the light. Shouldn't have I just ended this? Stopped at all the suffering I caused everyone, and just admitted to it. They all have places to be. So why couldn't I just say, yeah, I did it? 4 stupidly simple words I couldn't get out of my mouth. Why didn't I think I did anything? I did. I killed so many people. I can admit it now, but what was wrong with me then? I'm a psychiatrist. I should be able to tell what is wrong with people with the slightest movement. But in this case, I can't, and I don't know why. The entire trial, I had no feeling in me. It's like I was turning into someone else. I felt no remorse for killing 17 people. And yeah, sure it was out of my hands. But I still was caught red-handed prescribing medication people never even needed just to make a profit. I just don't understand it all. I have studied the brains, body languages, and emotions of thousands of people for most of my life. Yet somehow, I can't find out why or what happened to me. I was a good person before all of this. I had friends, an amazing career, a life, and a family. So how could one bad decision make me want to drive that all away? The answer, you may be wondering, I will never be able to give. I shot out of my chair fiercely. Not guilty, Your Honor. The whole courtroom gasped out loud. I plead not guilty. The call scene. A rainy evening. Thunder rumbles in the distance as rain taps steadily against the window of a modest apartment. The dim lighting casts long, restless shadows across the room. The faint flicker of a nearby street lamp seeps through the blinds, adding a melancholic glow to the space. A landline phone rings, sharp and intrusive, cutting through the ambient rain pattern. Sitting on her worn couch with a half-read book resting on her lap, Claire stiffens. She glances at the phone, her heart thumping at the unexpected sound, as if it doesn't fit into her tranquil evening. After a moment's hesitation, she picks it up. Claire, hello? The line crackles faintly, followed by a pause so long it feels static. Then, a calm and deliberate voice speaks. Stranger, is this 555-3248? Claire, yes, who is this? The voice carries a weight that makes her sit up straighter. Stranger, you don't know me, but I must talk to you. Claire frowns, her grip on the receiver tightening. Her free hand instinctively brushes the edge of her book, the texture grounding her in an unreal moment. Her eyes dart to the rain-speckled window, searching for a reason and context to anchor the odd exchange. Claire, I think you have the wrong number, stranger. No, Claire, I don't. Her name hits her like a sharp slap, causing her breath to catch. The stranger's calm, steady tone unnerves her. A chill creeps up her spine as she glances around the small apartment. The corners of the room seem darker now, with the shadows stretching like tendrils toward her. Claire, pause. How do you know my name, stranger? That's not important. What matters is that you listen to me. You're not safe. Her mind races. 1,000 explanations surge forward, each more implausible than the last. Her voice wavers, though she forces an edge of firmness into her tone. Claire, sharply. Excuse me? Her grip on the receiver tightens, and her knuckles whiten. An involuntary tremor beneath her surface betrays the facade of control she's trying to project. Stranger, please, just listen. There's no time to explain everything. You need to leave your apartment now. Don't pack a bag. Don't waste a second. Just go. Claire blinks, her mind catching onto the sheer absurdity of the command. She lets out a nervous laugh, though it sounds hollow even to her ears. Claire, okay, seriously, who put you up to this? Was it Nina? She's always pulling this kind of stranger. This isn't a joke, Claire. The voice pierces her deflection with a sharp edge. Thunder crashes outside, shaking the windows and masking the sound of her sharp inhale. Claire stands instinctively, the book falling from her lap. Her bare feet press against the cold hardwood floor, grounding her again in the surreal moment. Claire, voice rising. I don't know who you are, but, stranger, interrupting, look out your window. Her heartbeat quickens. She hesitates, clutching the receiver as though it's the only thing tethering her to reality. Slowly, she moves to the window, her hand shaking as she pulls back the blinds. The street below is drenched in the rain, but her eyes immediately land on a figure standing across the street, motionless under the flickering light of a street lamp. Their face is obscured by a hood, their silhouette unnervingly still. Claire's breath catches as the figure tilts its head, as though she is aware she is watching. Stranger. Now, do you believe me? Claire stumbles back from the window, her heart pounding. The receiver trembles in her hand. Her voice is a hoarse whisper. Claire. Who is that, stranger? Someone who shouldn't be there. Leave. Now, Claire glances toward the door of her apartment, her mind spinning with questions. The shadows in the room seem to deepen, pressing in around her. She feels the weight of the stranger's words. The urgency is unmistakable. Her instincts scream at her to move, but fear roots her in place. The voice cuts through her attempt at humor, sudden and sharp, freezing her mid-sentence. Stranger. I wouldn't call if it weren't serious. Claire, snapping. I don't even know who you are. Why would I trust anything you're saying? Stranger. I've been watching and know about the black car parked across the street. Claire's emotions become numb. Earlier, she had barely noticed the car, attributing it to a neighbor's visitor or someone sheltering from the rain. Now, the memory of its presence sharpens, and her hands shake as she edges toward the window. Her voice drops to a whisper. Claire, how do you... Stranger. It's been there for hours, hasn't it? 2 men inside. They're waiting for something or someone. The stranger's words weigh her down, causing her to hesitate. Slowly, she reaches for the curtain, pulling it back just enough to see. Her heart hammers as her gaze locks onto the sleek black car parked beneath the flickering street lamp. The rain cascades off its hood, dark windows like mirrors, revealing nothing of what lies inside. Her breath catches in her throat, her voice trembling as she forces the question out. Claire, voice trembling. Who are they, stranger? Not friends. That's all you need to know. Her stomach twists. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. She looks back at the car as though staring long enough will unlock some clue to their presence. The thought of being watched targets claws at her sanity. Claire, hoarse whisper. Why would they be watching me, stranger? You have something they want. Or maybe someone you know does. It doesn't matter. People perceive you as a solitary figure. Her vision blurs with rising panic. She steps back from the window, her hand gripping the curtain, as though it's the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes dart around the apartment, scanning the familiar clutter. Her jacket slung over a chair, an unopened stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and the half-empty glass of wine on the table, as if the answer might be hiding there. But nothing makes sense. Claire, frantic. I don't understand. I'm just an office manager. I don't. Stranger, interrupting, firm. Claire, focus. You're wasting time. Leave now. Take the fire escape. Don't use the front door. Her head spins. The idea of fleeing overwhelms her senses. Rain drums against the window, matching the frantic beat of her heart. She stumbles toward the couch, snatching up her phone and keys, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Claire shaking her head. And go where, stranger? Anywhere but there. Head toward the train station. Don't stop until you're in a crowded place. She freezes, gripping the phone tightly, her knuckles white. Her voice drops to a whisper, tears threatening to spill. Claire choking. I don't know if I can trust you. The line goes silent for a beat, but when the voice returns, it's colder, steelier, a warning, laced with urgency. Stranger, you don't have to trust me, but if you stay, they will come inside, and they won't knock. The words struck her deeply. A fresh wave of fear courses through her as a sound cuts through the rain. A distant car door shutting. Claire's breath hitches. She turns back to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see a shadowy figure step out of the black car. Another figure follows, their movements deliberate and synchronized. One figure adjusts their coat, and for a fleeting moment, she notices the gleam of something metallic at their side. Stranger, urgently. Claire, go now. Her breath tightens in her throat. The phone slips from her hand, clattering onto the table as adrenaline takes over. She bolts for the window, leading to the fire escape, fumbling with the latch. The rain hisses against the glass, and the faint hum of voices from the street grows louder. She freezes as a sharp knock echoes from the front door. It's noisy, firm, and final. The sound reverberates through the apartment like a countdown. Stranger, from the fallen receiver, faint. Don't look back, just run. The rain outside grows heavier, drumming against the window, as if urging her to act. Claire stands paralyzed, her feet rooted to the floor, and her mind caught between disbelief and the suffocating weight of fear. Claire, growing frantic, picking up the phone. Wait, I need more than this. I need answers. Who are you? How do you know all of this? There's a long pause on the other end. The silence is so profound that she can hear her shaky breaths. When the voice returns, it's softer, almost regretful. Stranger, someone who owes you a debt, a big one. Claire, confused. A debt? I don't even know you, stranger. You don't remember, but you saved my life once. And now, I'm saving yours. Her thoughts whirl, memories colliding in her mind like shattered glass. Fragments of the past flash before her. Small acts of kindness, fleeting interactions with strangers. But then, one moment stands out. Years ago, she pulled an injured man out of a wrecked car on a rainy night like this one. The metallic tang of blood, the desperate sound of his gasps, and her trembling hands pressed against his wound until paramedics arrived. His face, pale and bleeding, swims into focus in her mind. Claire, voice shaking. Is this about that car accident? Were you, stranger, firmly? There's no time for questions. Go now, Claire. I'll call you again when it's safe. The phone clicks, the line going dead. The finality of the sound lingers in her ears. Claire stands frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear, her knuckles white. She flinches as a crack of thunder rattles the windows. Slowly, she lowers the phone, her eyes drifting back to the window. The black car remains motionless, but now a faint glow of a cigarette flares inside. Her chest tightens as she stares at the tiny ember, an ominous beacon in the darkness. Claire, to herself, whispering, "What the hell is going on?" Suddenly, a faint creak from the hallway shatters the silence. Her heart leaps into her throat, her breath catching. She spins toward the sound, her eyes wide and searching. The noise could be anything. The old building settling, a neighbor, but now it feels like a warning. The hairs on her arms rise, and instinct takes over. She grabs her jacket and keys from the couch, her movements hurried and clumsy. Without a second thought, she moves to the window. The rain lashes at the glass, its icy touch shocking her as she forces the stubborn frame open. The fire escape looms outside, a slick, glistening path into the storm. Climbing through, the cold rain instantly soaks her, plastering her hair to her face. The metal beneath her feet is treacherous, every step a gamble. She grips the railing tightly, her knuckles aching as she descends. Below her, the black car suddenly roars to life. The headlights snap on, slicing through the downpour. She catches her breath. A door slams, and a tall, shadowy figure steps out. Their movements are purposeful and unhurried. Claire doesn't wait to see more. She runs, her feet slipping on the slick fire escape as she reaches the ground. The rain blurs her vision, each drop like a needle against her skin. Her breath is ragged, her pulse pounding in her ears. Behind her, the unmistakable sound of footsteps splashing in the water. pools echoes through the narrow alley. The sound is steady and deliberate. A voice, not the stranger's, pierces the storm with a low, menacing call. Voice: Claire, stop. You can't run forever. The words twist in her mind, each syllable heavy with malice. She doesn't look back. Every instinct screams at her to keep moving. She darts into an alley, her feet slipping on the wet concrete. The flickering street lamps overhead cast eerie shadows that seemed to chase her. Although the train station isn't far away, every step feels like a lifetime. Her muscles burn, her lungs ache, but she pushes forward, the stranger's voice echoing in her mind. Stranger's voice in her mind. You're not safe. As the rain intensifies, so does her determination. Each crack of thunder feels like a countdown. Each shadow is a threat. She is confident that she cannot stop. Whatever this is, whatever danger is hunting her, standing still means death. And Claire isn't ready to die. And a lively souvenir. A lively souvenir. We were on very good terms with our neighbors of about 4 years in our San Diego, California neighborhood. We invite each other over for barbecues, and Joe and I frequently sit in front of a TV somewhere on Sundays to watch a football game or two. Our wives, Annette and Ellie, are in a book club together, work out at LA Fitness, and enjoy poetry reading events. Last summer, we upgraded our backyard and had a pool put in. Nothing massive, just your standard 16 at 32 family pool. It was quite the hangout for both our families. Joe and Elle recently returned from visiting family in Gainesville, Florida. We all convened at their back patio for the celebratory end of their vacation, to sip mimosas and Hefeweizens while they gave us all the highlights of their trip. They were excited about the resort they visited and the swampland tours they took there. They were like big kids, describing how the airboat driver whipped them through the swamp, even giving them an extra thrill by Tokyo drifting on the sharp turns. Sounds like a lot of fun, Annette replied. Well, that's not the best part. We've found a bit of a souvenir. Really? Oh yeah, Joe said proudly. I'll get it, Ellie said, as she disappeared into the house. I know initially you guys are going to think we're nuts, but I assure you, this is going to be great. Wow, Joe, Donald said. This is quite the build-up. The anticipation is killing us over here. Right then, Ellie emerged with a mid-sized glass tank. Wah! Donald exclaimed. He can't believe what he's seeing. No way! You guys can't be serious, said Annette. That's crazy, guys. In the glass case, there was a 2.5-foot alligator. Isn't he beautiful? Ellie beamed. He's already grown a couple of inches since we've been back. Whoa, I was actually thinking you brought back a snake or maybe an iguana. But you went all the way back to the evolutionary source. A fucking alligator, Don said. No way this is safe. Elle, no way, Annette cautioned. She was concerned, and her voice shook with emotion as she tried to implore her friend to abandon this idea. This thing is gonna grow and eat you guys. No, this is a terrible idea, sweetie. No, it's okay. We thought this through, John explained, and made an informed decision. This wasn't an impulse buy. I don't know, buddy. It looks like an impulse buy with teeth. Dawn chided them. They all laughed, except Annette. How did you even come across somebody selling an alligator, Joe? I mean, I know it's Florida, but people aren't just selling these at the 7-Eleven, she asked. Joe explained how part of the habitat tour involved observing the local wildlife, including gators. They also breed them there. This alligator was part of a litter that was to be raised within the wildlife preserve, but unfortunately, it was a runt. He was too small to compete with his siblings for food, and eventually they would turn on him and consume him as well. The staff were going to have to put him down. This completely exacerbated Ellie, and after some conversation, a disclaimer, and cash, she somehow convinced the preserve owner to allow them to take the little guy with them. And you were okay with this, Joe? Dawn asked incredulously. Joe shrugged his shoulders. I didn't see any issues with it being so small right now. I guess I kinda kicked the can down the road as far dealing with him getting to be full-sized. As it was explained to us, they are very loyal and highly intelligent. Once domesticated, they are just like dogs or goats. Wait, Annette asked. How did you get it on the plane? Well, the preserve owner wrapped it for travel and fed it, and we just added wet towels over it and placed it in our checked bags. You ran it through baggage claim? Have you seen how they treat those suitcases? Dawn asked, almost laughing in disbelief. Oh, yes. And I was so worried about the little guy. I could hardly contain my anxiety the whole flight. I hoped he wasn't too scared. I told her, "Hey, honey, it's a reptile. They're not scared of anything." My wife and I stood there, perplexed. This has got to be the dumbest idea in the history of dumb ideas. Yet here they sat, two highly educated adults, carrying on about one of the most dangerous animals on the planet, like it's a long-haired lab puppy. I have to ask some grown-up questions. I steal a glance at my wife with a raised eyebrow, and she shrugs, effectively giving me the go-ahead. Joe? Firstly, how in the world do you domesticate an alligator? Is there like a shock collar? Here, when I zap you, it means don't bite my finger off? I mean, come on. Ha ha. I hear the sarcasm, Dawn. No. As you feed him, he gets used to your scent and your presence. He begins to associate you with food and satisfaction. It's all positive reinforcement. He bonds with you. Yeah, just like a dog, like we said. He won't bite the hand that feeds him silly. Ellie chimed in. He eats chicken, mostly. But we can throw in some fish, rodents, steak, and even pork, to give him a variety. They guy gave us a pamphlet for use as a reference, So you read Alligators for Dummies? And you think that prepared you? Annette asked. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Did you say rodents? You feed it rodents? Are you going to buy a shoebox full of mice and dump it in his glass case? Oh, don't be so crude, Don. Of course not, Joe said nervously, as he rubbed the back of his neck. Well, not exactly a box full. You really are going to go through with this? How long before he grows up to be a fully carnivorous reptile? There's some exotic animal farms around. We can relocate him too, when the time comes. For a fee, they'll come and collect him, humanely, of course, and he'll live out his days at the California Preserve. Dude, is this even legal in California? Can animal control fine you or come confiscate it? Well, it's an ask for forgiveness instead of permission kind of thing. We aren't breeding it or selling it for a profit, so therefore it's characterized as an exotic pet, in my opinion. It's no more illegal that Tyson having a tiger or Michael Jackson having a chimpanzee. But this is an alligator, Joe. Annette pleaded outwardly with her friends. This is a cold-blooded beast. Every incident I have ever seen involves an alligator snapping, its jaws shut on some unsuspecting body part of the owner or trainer. We are trying to get you to see that this will end badly. You and Ellie are putting yourselves in danger. Annette's hands were on her hips, as she's clearly frustrated. We can't seem to talk any sense into our friends. Look, guys, I hear you, but we'll be fine. Come here. Joe stood and put his arms out, and he, Don, and Annette had a group hug. "Aw, there. That's so much better," Ellie said. "I know. We appreciate your concern. You're good friends, and you have raised some thoughtful questions, and I would expect no less. But friends, don't worry. This is gonna be a great experience. Alex and us will grow to be..." "Wait," Dawn interrupted. Alex? Alex Alligator? Really, Joe? It absolutely fit like a glove. And when I called him that, his little eyelids flipped. I think he likes it, Ellie added. She reached in and stroked the back of its head. "You want to hold it? Here, it's okay. Let me just get him situated." She set the glass case on the table and reached in and grabbed its tail with her right hand and slid her left hand forward to grasp it under its jaw. But something must have spooked it. It let out a high-pitched snarl and spun its head, and with its tiny but razor-sharp teeth clamped down on Ellie's forefinger and thumb. Blood immediately spurted outward as Ellie screamed and knocked the glass case off the table, which exploded when it hit the patio. Alex didn't fall. However, he hung on to Ellie's flesh, dangling and thrashing with all its body weight, as if trying to rend her flesh from her. Blood started squirting out of its jaws as it whipped its body from side to side. Ellie grabbed at it and tried to pull it off, but it was dug in, and she screamed even louder. Joe grabbed its body and pulled, but it was clamped down deep, and pulling it made the flesh of Ellie's thumb started to rip from her hand, making her cry out more. Ellie collapsed onto the patio, screaming incoherently, as the gator's face was now bright red with the free-flowing blood from Ellie's mangled hand. Annette grabbed a big hunk of glass and began hitting it on its head. 1 blow, 2 blows, 3 blows. Finally, the gator released its grip, rolled over onto the patio, and scurried away. "Oh, Ellie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Joe said as he pulled off his shirt and attempted to stem the flow of blood from Ellie's marred flesh. Her thumb was only hanging on by 2 tendons, and half the flesh from her index finger was tattered and torn. He wrapped it up with his shirt. "Dawn, put pressure here, please," Joe said, almost in tears. Annette had both hands covering her mouth and was wide-eyed with disbelief as Ellie moaned and cradled her hand. She was growing visibly pale and going into shock, no doubt. Joe called 911 while Annette comforted Ellie. Dawn quietly wondered if they'd be able to save her thumb or not. How could this thing have turned so deadly so fast? Shit, he thought. Speaking of deadly, where is that little fucker? Joe, did you see where it went? No, I didn't. The little bastard's probably terrified, hiding in some cubby hole somewhere. The dispatcher is sending animal control, but maybe we can bag it before it gets away. Damn, I fucked up, Dawn. I'm such a fuck-up, he said in a frustrated tone. What was I thinking? Hey, let's focus. No time for that now, buddy. I'll run to my house and get a spotlight real quick. So Dawn went out their back fence and crossed over onto his property. He unlatched the back fence and headed for his tool shed on the other side of the pool, when lo and behold, there was Alex. He was casually floating in their pool. There was a red stain afloat around him, apparently Ellie's blood. But Alex was totally oblivious to the carnage he caused. He's merely enjoying the cool water. Dawn doesn't know why, but he thought about the story of the scorpion and the frog. What did they expect? He's an alligator. As Dawn approached the pool, Alex seemed to sense his presence and slowly paddled towards the edge of the pool towards Dawn. Wait, what's this? What are you doing, little guy? It turned, its body exposing its tail, and made a cooing sound. Please don't let this be the second dumbest thing that happens today. Dawn squatted down and gently reached under the gator and scooped it up, holding it under its head and tail. He made sure to keep a firm grip on Alex and not expose any appendages that may trigger it. You need to be with your own kind, runt or not. He actually kinda liked the little guy. But yeah, it's time to go. You've caused enough trouble today. He heard the sirens approaching and headed back to Joe's house. Collection day. The hovercraft roared over the tree line, hulking steel against a bruised gray sky. The rotors thrashed, a violent, mechanical pulse, as the collectors clad in shiny black armor, spilled out onto the cracked earth. "Collection Day," Commander Hu sang, his voice crackling through the comm system and echoing through the steel hull. Khufu stood fast and readied his weapon. The door opened with a hiss as early morning sunlight poured inside. "Unload!" Commander Hu called. Their boots thudded and pounded the floor, first steel and then earth, as the villagers beyond cowered behind huts and crates. The collectors burst forth from the hovercraft like terrible ants, busy and bustling. They moved with ruthless efficiency. One yanked a sack of withered potatoes from a woman's trembling hands. Another snatched a clay pot, its contents spilling onto the dust, staining it a muddy brown. Khufu watched, his stomach clenching. This was once his home. None of them knew that, of course. When you joined the collectors, any life you once had was washed away like soot in the rain. He'd been on more than a dozen of these runs, more than a dozen collection days, each of them vicious, but none like this. Then he saw her, Willow. She stood apart, her chin lifted in a gesture of defiance he remembered so well. Even after all this time, the fire in her eyes was unmistakable. It was Willow, unbent, unbeaten, untamed. Thunder crashed in the distance as a wave of memories crashed over him. It was a collection day, like this one, many years ago. The sun beat down on their bare backs as the two of them, scrawny saplings in a field of oaks, snuck through the tall grass. Mrs. Rosen had fallen ill, so they had hidden away a few armfuls of food and medicine, and were determined to find a place to hide before the hovercraft left. Willow had a knack for hiding. She was always the last caught in hide and seek. But on this day, something gave them away. Perhaps the swaying of the grass as they crawled through it. "Who's there?" A collector's shout, sharp as a blade, shattered the quiet. Fear, cold and slick, slid down Khufu's spine. He glanced at Willow, her eyes wide and dark. He pressed a finger to his lips. "Shh," he breathed silently. Then he stood up, his arms raised. "I'm sorry, sir. It's my aunt. She's sick." "Come here," the collector barked. Khufu stepped forward carefully as Willow crouched frozen. There were some words exchanged, but Khufu could never recall them. Collectors did not permit explanations or negotiations. They dealt only in force. They pummeled him, each blow a dull thud against his ribs, his back, his skull. Then, as he blood mixed with the dirt beneath him, they gathered the food and medicine and marched away. But Willow, hidden amongst the stalks, was safe. "She's a feisty one," a collector crackled. Khufu stared back at him as a light rain began tapping on their helmets. Willow, cornered, lashed out. Her small fist connected with a collector's arm, a surprising show of strength. The other collectors swarmed her. One grabbed her arms from behind as another lifted his weapon, ready to strike her. But Willow reared back like a bucking horse and kicked hard, her foot cracking his visor. He dropped his rifle and staggered back. "Enough," a deep voice sounded. Commander Hu approached, the red cape of his rank swimming behind him. "What's going on here? The girl is resistant," a collector reported. Hu studied her for a moment. Another cry of thunder roared out as the rain fell harder. Hu's cape billowed as he turned on his heel. "Execute her," Hu said, his voice flat. He looked at Khufu. "You do it." Khufu's heart hammered against his ribs. Feeling his hands tremble, he quickly stood straight and nodded. He walked toward Willow, each step heavy. He saw the fear in her eyes, the desperate plea, felt the mud squelch beneath his boots. "It's you," she whimpered, her voice soft and raspy. Khufu squared himself toward her and watched her eyes fill with tears. "Khufu," she said. Without moving his head, he glanced left and right. She had used his name, a name unknown to any of the others. "Do it quickly," Commander Hu said. He took a deep breath, then another. There were 10 of them in total. Of the villagers, there were at least 50, maybe more. They were weak, but their strength together could be formidable. If he turned his gun on his commander, then perhaps the other villagers would seize the opportunity. He looked at the villagers. He saw old man Tiber, his face a mask of grief. He saw the fear in the children's eyes. He saw the collectors, their faces blank, black pools of nothingness shining in the rain. He thought of his new home in the gleaming city in the distance, built on the backs of people like this, his people. He thought of the comfortable life he had, the life he'd purchased with his silence, his willingness to join his oppressors. One more deep breath. He raises his rifle and squeezes the trigger. The shot rings out, and the rain freezes. Hu staggers back, his hand clutching his chest. He takes a few clumsy steps, and then collapses. The wind whistles through the village and sizzles in the gripping silence. Then chaos erupts. Collectors turn, weapons raised. Khufu looks to Willow. "Run," he says. He then aims and shoots at the closest collector, then another, and another. All 3 of them fall, but he feels a sharp bite in his shoulder, and his arm goes limp. He dives toward a vegetable stand and takes cover. Cabbages explode around him, and voices shout, mixing together like dense fog. Khufu lifts his rifle atop a nearby barrel. and aims, his other arm still hanging lifelessly at his side. To his delight, at least 20 villagers, including Willow, have overtaken the remaining collectors. He stands and looks around. 4 are dead, the rest disarmed. They have done it. Willow turns, and their eyes lock. The sun finally crawls out and reaches down as if to embrace them. Khufu, she calls, a light of hope in her eyes. She begins to run toward him, her arms outstretched. He reaches for her. "Do it quickly," I said. It was Commander Hu. Khufu's eyes went wide. He shook the driving rein from his visor. "Yes, sir." "Khufu, please," Willow screamed, her face flooded with tears. He raised a hand to his lips. "Shh," he said, trying to calm her. But the promise felt like ash in his mouth. He opened his eyes and squeezed the trigger. The awful sound rings out and echoes like laughter amidst the booming thunder. Willow's body slumped to the ground. A hand clasped Khufu's shoulders. "Well done," Commander Hu said. "Now load up." A rose-scented Santa Claus. Mrs. Claus doesn't bake cookies. She doesn't prepare any dessert at all, for that matter. Her husband eats enough cookies to last him 1 year on his journey around the globe. Instead, she cracks 5 eggs, 3 for him, 2 for her, spreads butter on toast, tosses a bowl of fruit for them to share, and prepares her husband's favorite, a mug of coffee with frothed reindeer milk and candy cane crumbles on top. It always gives him a nice boost before the annual Christmas soiree, which is hosted by the elves, forever adorers, kiss-asses, another might say, of the man in the red suit. This cup of joe will definitely give him a kick. The clock reads 5:35 a.m. He should be arriving soon, no later than 6, she hopes. If he's on time, their Christmas tradition can go on as usual. In the first 25 years of their marriage, she'd hear the reindeer and their jingling bells land on their cottage's immense sleighway at 6 on the dot. For the last 8 years, he was always 10, 20, even 30 minutes late. "Old age," explained the elder elf through the years. She scoffed openly at his comment. 65 was not that old. Last year, Mr. Claus arrived an hour late due to a highly rare reindeer injury. Plight, the Rudolph of the group. There were others with noses to guide the way, but Rudolph was the original, had broken a leg. Before he landed, Mrs. Claus was so distraught by her husband's recurring tardiness that she'd thrown the entire breakfast in the trash and dumped the coffee in the sink. 5:45 now. She should soon be hearing Santa's ho 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 as he slows his sleigh in the sky. She doesn't. But her anger is now water underneath a frozen layer of cool indifference. She grabs the coffee pot and pours 2 cups now, prepares his, then lays it on the pine tree-shaped coaster. 5:50. 6 on twuck. 6:01. She waits at the table. At 6:25, Santa Claus lands. From inside, she hears the elves cheering, clapping, celebrating. No doubt they're all wearing their best elf suits, midnight black, and made of pure wool, ready for the party that starts in 45 minutes. Mrs. Claus stopped going out to greet her husband 3 years ago. Old age and whatnot, she told the elder elf with a stiff, sweet smile, whose reply was merely an awkward smile and hesitant nod. Mrs. Claus waits at the circular wooden table on the chair that faces the door of their small cottage. Just a minute later, better to walk past those elves, lest they talk your ear off. The door opens, and in walks the man of the hour. Noel, known to her and some close friends, smiles. She knows what he's going to say next, because it's the same thing he says every year. Mrs. Claus deepens and roughens her voice to imitate her husband as he says, "I can't wait to shave this damn thing off." Noel laughs, and she does too. She still does love this man very much. Nothing, no one, could ever snatch that feeling away from her. Noel loves being Santa. She still remembers the pride on his face, mixed with shock and sudden nerves, when the elf jury chose him for the task. This was way back when he was Noel Fable, and she, Winterfrost, back when they'd only stolen a kiss or two and were too shy to hold hands in public. She'd never imagined she'd be Mrs. Claus, and certainly never thought about how their lives could look 28 years later. They selected him just 1 hour after Nick Claus had passed away at 75. It was, and had to be, a swift process. She'd wondered what it'd feel like if her husband died, and just 60 minutes later, people were lining up to replace him. She also thought about who it'd be. Perhaps Elliot Ryder, the young man who'd fixed up Plight's leg last year. She quite liked Elliot. He was the only one who was honest with her and told her that the only reason Plight would injure his leg, the others left unscathed, would be because he didn't want to land on a certain roof. Despite popular belief, reindeer are not loyal to the man with the bag himself, but rather the cause of Christmas itself. In fact, she too might say that she was dedicated to the cause, if need be. So why wouldn't he want to land? Elliot had asked her. She'd merely shrugged, because that was none of his business. She'd be replaced too, of course. If the new Santa had a honey, then it'd happen immediately. If he was single and ready to jingle, then later. But she'd be stripped of the name Claus and forced to move on. At least she'd get to keep their home and have a comfortable place to grieve. It was a quick and cruel but necessary procedure. Christmas didn't wait for anybody, and the North Pole was legally required to meet those children's demands. "Come sit, my love," Mrs. Claus says, patting the seat of the empty chair beside her. Noel obeys and moves closer to her. Before sitting, he leans in and gives her a sweet kiss on the cheek. The first time that Mrs. Claus smelled roses off his puffy white beard, she didn't question it. The third time, it had made her eyebrows furrow, but they'd had breakfast, and she'd moved on. The fourth time, suspicion came. Only confirmation followed in the next years. A perfume that didn't belong to her, that didn't actually exist on the North Pole at all, where there were only cinnamon, hot chocolate, pine, and other related scents. The tardiness and the incident last year only added to the pile of evidence. He threw in the logs and the kindling. Add a flame, and what else could you get but a fire? The scent now makes her knuckles turn white as snow against the mug's handle. "My favorite part of the day," Noel says as he finally sits. He reaches for the coffee cup, and Mrs. Claus only stares with a smile that looks like a sticker someone threw on her face and stuck. It doesn't take one sip. He tells her about his night, skipping over certain details she imagines. Not that she wants to know. And together they eat. She finds that she has no trouble swallowing the eggs, chewing on the toast, even sipping her coffee. Not even when Noel starts slurring his words while talking about the best cookie of the night. She places the mug down with a soft thump as the slurs become choking sounds. She notices drops of milk on his mustache then. He looks at her with a confused expression, and those still gloved hands go to his neck. But Mrs. Claus doesn't move, not even when he calls out for a name that is not her own. The smell of roses is still fresh under her nose when Mr. Claus starts turning purple. Santa falls off the chair, and Mrs. Claus, like any good wife, screams and calls for help. The drought. Summer died 50 years ago, and autumn never came. The sky was a hard shell of endless blue, unbroken by clouds, as if God had dipped his paintbrush in cobalt and forgotten to rinse it out. Heat waves shimmered off the asphalt like restless ghosts, and the air tasted faintly of burnt rubber and dust, the stale breath of a town stuck in time. Cedar Ridge had always been small, a thumbprint on the back roads of nowhere. There were farms, of course, though most had dried up and blown away with the last real rain. What remained were brittle corn stalks, blackened and skeletal, standing in neat rows like mourners at a graveside. The few farmers left mumbled about drought-resistant crops, but spoke of miracles with the same dry hopelessness they reserved for paying taxes. Rust scabs bloomed on the water towers, and the gas station on Main Street had stopped carrying windshield wiper fluid years ago. No need for it when the sky never wept. They still sold beer, though, and on days when the heat pressed down like a fist, the townsfolk gathered in the shade of the Sinclair station's green dinosaur sign, cold cans sweating in their hands. It was there, leaning against the faded scales of that prehistoric beast, that Tom Weaver saw the stranger for the first time. The man came walking up the road from the south, where the horizon quivered like molten glass. He wore black, a suit crisp as a knife edge, and carried a battered leather suitcase in one hand. A wide-brimmed hat shaded his face, but there was something unsettling about him, even from a distance. He didn't stumble or waver in the heat the way normal men did. His stride was steady, purposeful, as if he carried winter in his pocket. "Ain't seen a salesman in years," muttered Earl Granger, wiping sweat from his forehead with a grease-streaked rag. "What the hell's he sellin'? Coffins?" The men chuckled, low and uneasy, but Tom's beer went sour on his tongue. Something about the stranger's silhouette made his skin crawl. The sharp angles, the way shadows clung to him like cobwebs, even in the brutal sunlight. The man in black reached the edge of the group and tipped his hat politely. His eyes were a pale, icy blue, startling against the deep tan of his weathered face. He looked like someone who'd walked a long way and hadn't found what he was looking for. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "Mighty warm today, isn't it?" Earl snorted. "Been warm every damn day since Truman was president. What's it to you?" The stranger's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, I'm just passin' through. Thought maybe you fine folks could help me with a little business matter." Tom narrowed his eyes. "What kind of business?" The man set his suitcase down with a soft thud. The latches gleamed like silver teeth as he flicked them open. Inside, nestled against dark velvet, were rows of gleaming vials filled with liquid that shimmered like captured moonlight. "I sell weather," the man said simply. There was a beat of stunned silence, followed by a bark of laughter from Earl. "Weather? You gotta be kidding me. What's next? Bottled air?" The stranger didn't flinch. "Rain, snow, a cool breeze on a summer's day. I've got it all. Guaranteed to work or your money back." Tom stepped closer, curiosity prickling beneath his unease. He peered into the case, mesmerized by the swirling colors. One vial shimmered with iridescent blues and silvers, like the reflection of moonlight on water. Another glowed a fierce, fiery red. "How much?" Tom asked before he could stop himself. The stranger's lips curved into that unsettling smile again. "For you, sir? A bargain. One memory, freely given." Tom blinked. "A memory? Just a little thing, the man assured him. Something you won't miss. In exchange, I'll give you enough rain to fill your fields for a season. Earl spat on the ground. This is bullshit. Come on, Tommy, let's get out of here. But Tom's heart was pounding. He thought of his farm, the cracked earth, the dying crops. Thought of his wife, Ellie, who hadn't smiled in months because she knew what was coming. The bank foreclosure, the auction, the slow death of everything they'd built together. What kind of memory? Tom asked hoarsely. The stranger's eyes gleamed. Oh, just a small one. Perhaps the taste of your first kiss, the sound of your mother's laughter. Nothing important. Tom hesitated, then nodded. Deal. The man in black extended a gloved hand, and Tom shook it. The air shimmered between them, and for a moment, Tom felt a strange, dizzying tug deep in his chest, like something had been gently plucked from inside him. When it was over, the stranger handed him a vial filled with shimmering blue liquid. Pour this over your fields tonight, he instructed. And remember, the bargain is sealed. Tom barely heard him. His mind was already racing with visions of green fields and heavy rain. That night, under a sky still stubbornly cloudless, Tom stood at the edge of his withered fields. The brittle corn stalks rattled faintly in the dry breeze, a chorus of death. His hands trembled as he uncorked the vial, the shimmering blue liquid catching what little starlight there was. The scent hit him first, clean, sharp, like distant lightning and wet pavement after a storm. It was a smell he hadn't known in years. Taking a deep breath, Tom tilted the vial and let the liquid trickle out. It splattered onto the cracked, dust-hardened earth with a faint hiss, vanishing almost instantly into the thirsty ground. He watched, breath tight in his chest, waiting for something, anything, to happen. At first, there was only smoke, thick and suffocating. Then the earth shuddered beneath his feet, subtle as a heartbeat, but growing stronger. The low, primal growl of thunder rolled across the sky, distant yet powerful, like some ancient beast awakening from a long slumber. The wind shifted, cool and damp, carrying with it the promise of deliverance. A single drop splattered against Tom's forehead, cold and startling. He blinked, hardly daring to believe it. Another drop, then another, until the heavens opened with a sudden, furious roar. Rain came down in sheets, wild, relentless, drenching him in moments. The smell of wet earth rose around him, rich and intoxicating. Dust turned to mud beneath his boots as rivulets of water carved new paths through the parched ground. Tom threw back his head and laughed. A raw, unhinged sound torn from somewhere deep inside him. He spread his arms wide, welcoming the downpour like a sinner at baptism. Water slicked his hair to his scalp and dripped from his chin, but he didn't care. His laughter mingled with the storm, defiant and joyful. The fields drank greedily, the dead husks of corn softening, straightening, as though waking from a long nightmare. Leaves unfurled, vibrant green bleeding back into lifeless stalks. The transformation was swift and almost magical. A resurrection right before his eyes. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and glistening under a pale new sun. Tom stood at the edge of his fields, now lush and vibrant, the corn standing tall and proud, shimmering with droplets of water. The air smelled sweet, alive. The screen door creaked, and Ellie came running out of the house, bare feet splashing through puddles. Her face was radiant with disbelief, tears mingling with the remnants of rain. "Tom? How?" she gasped, her voice breaking with wonder. He didn't answer. Words seemed pointless. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, fierce and grateful, as if sealing a promise between them. For the first time in years, Cedar Ridge felt alive, and hope, long buried beneath drought and despair, bloomed anew. The stranger returned a week later. Tom saw him standing by the gas station, his black suit immaculate despite the mud that clung to everyone else's boots. He knew, deep down, that this was no coincidence. "What do you want?" Tom demanded, his voice rough. The man's smile was razor sharp. "Just checking in. How's the farm?" "It's fine. Better than fine." "Glad to hear it." The stranger's eyes glittered. "But you see, Mr. Weaver, memories are tricky things. Sometimes they're connected in ways we don't expect." Tom frowned. "What are you talking about?" The man tilted his head. "Tell me, Tom, do you remember your wife's name?" Tom opened his mouth, then froze. A cold dread crept up his spine. He could see her face clearly, her bright eyes, the curve of her smile, but her name was gone, slipped through his fingers like water. "No," Tom whispered, horror dawning. "No, that's not possible." "Ah," the stranger said softly. "A shame. But as I said, a small thing. Nothing important." Tom lunged at him, but the man in black was already walking away, his silhouette dissolving into the shimmering heat. The rain never came again, and neither did Tom's wife. At least, not in any way that mattered. She was still there, smiling and talking. But her name was a hollow echo in Tom's mind, forever lost to the drought. And so Cedar Ridge, baked under the unchanging sun, its people haunted by what they'd forgotten. Banshee. The soft cushions of the leather couch cradled Kim's sweaty body. Her vision was fuzzy and dark, like looking through smudged sunglasses. She blinked rapidly, hoping to remedy her skewed sight. Then she heard voices, male and female. Yes, I did call 911. She needs to get better mascara. There's no way that was mascara. Kim recognized those voices. She must be on the couch in her office. But why? Well, what could it have been? Never heard anyone scream like that before. I know. It was unnatural. She must have had some kind of seizure. Yeah, it seemed her dog sensed it was going to happen. Oh, definitely. Don't worry, Kim. I'll take care of Groot while you're at the hospital. You won't believe this, but I had my first hot flash last night. It was so disgusting. Kim wasn't sure if that was TMI, but she was the broker and founder of this real estate firm, so she had the right to say whatever in the hell she wanted. However, she did find it uncomfortable to talk about. She just couldn't stop thinking about last night's sweat fest. When did you have your last period? Shelley asked. Kim scanned the faces of the 12-member team of real estate agents gathered at the conference table. Mostly men. Men didn't want to talk about this crap. Kim had never felt comfortable talking about female plumbing issues either. And this was not the time, nor the place, nor the company to speak of such things. She shouldn't have started this conversation. Just not thinking clearly today. Moving on. Jeffrey, you have a new listing? Subject changed. Every day was Bring Your Dog to Work Day. Kim brought Groot, a 2-year-old male Wheaton Terrier. Other team members brought their dogs as well, and all the canines got along. During the Monday meeting, Groot lay in his bed behind Kim's chair at the head of the table. Suddenly, he started whining, high-pitched and annoying. All conversation stopped. Groot went to Kim and pawed at her lap. Still whining, she rubbed his head. What is it? What's... Kim sucked in a loud breath, stood straight up, as if her spine had instantly become a metal rod. Then she started a low, guttural growl. She began to drool, long strands of saliva slinking from the corners of her mouth. People gasped. Kim faced the table, placed her hands on it, and crawled on top. She sat on her heels, stretched her torso and arms forward, and pointed at Jeffrey, who was seated at the other end of the table. Her index fingers were side by side, lips parted, teeth gnashing. Kim let out a shriek that had the agents covering their ears. Thick, black tears oozed from her eyes, made mad streaks down her ruddy cheeks, and dribbled onto the table like globs of old motor oil. All the dogs in the building barked. Most of the agents sped from the room. Jeffrey plastered himself against the wall behind his seat and stared at Kim, his eyes and mouth wide open. The shriek lasted for at least 60 seconds. Kim collapsed onto the table. At the hospital, Kim was informed that her scans were clear. The results from the cultures of the tears would take a few days to come back. The doctor had no answers for her regarding the shriek. She stayed overnight and then went home at 10:25 a.m. Kim had just put on pajamas and was ready to relax when she received a phone call from Shelley, one that put her in a fetal position. Heading south on I-85 in his very expensive, high-performance BMW, Jeffrey was breaking the speed limit, 10 miles over. It was no big deal, but it was raining. He was in the fast lane, as always. He rarely got to drive his car the way he wanted. It could go from 0-60 in under 3 seconds. Jeffrey eyed the long stretch of asphalt ahead of him and listened to Hush by Deep Purple, as loud as the car's sound system would allow. He was about to gun it when he saw a sedan slide from the northbound lane, coast through the grassy median, and head straight for him. Shit! Jeffrey stepped on the gas. The sliding car missed him, but wrecked into the truck behind him. Looking in his rearview mirror at the carnage of the colliding metal and glass, Jeffrey yelled, "Holy hell!" That's when he started to lose control of his vehicle, zigzagging, the road water washing up onto his windows from the right and the left. And then everything in Jeffrey's world stopped. At home, Kim sat on her sofa, weeping. Her father sat beside her, hugging her shoulders. "I can't believe this." "I know," said Marcus. Then he let out a hefty sigh. "I have something to tell you." "What?" "It's about your mother." Kim scowled at her father. They never talked about her mother. "It's about her death." "You want to talk about that now?" "Yes. It relates to all you're going through." "What? How?" Marcus covered his eyes with his hand. "How do I put this? Your mother suffered from the same affliction you're suffering from now." He looked directly at her. The shriek, the black tears. "You're what is known as a banshee." Kim stared at him as if he had grown another head. "That's not funny, Dad. I'm totally serious. Banshees shriek at people who are about to die. It's why your mother killed herself." She took a good, long look at his aged, hard-lined face. He wasn't lying. She should be mad that he hadn't told her this long ago. She wasn't. Couldn't be. She was too numb and too tired to feel anger toward him. Be prepared. People at work will stare at you. They'll talk about you, wonder things about you, even be afraid of you. Is that what happened to Mom? Yes. She began to cry again. "I'm so sorry, honey." After 10 minutes of weeping, Kim drank the hot tea her father had made. Groot went to her and sat beside her on the couch, which reminded her, "Dad, Groot whined at me just before it happened." "Yeah, nearby animals can sense the episodes before they happen. Don't know why. I've done a lot of research, but haven't determined why that happens." "What all have you discovered in your research?" "Well, that only women are banshees, that it starts at menopause, that you'll be a banshee until you die." "Fantastic. Didn't you know this was going to happen to me?" "We hoped it wouldn't. Your mother's mother said it might skip a generation." "Hey, Well, guess what? She sipped her tea. You should have warned me. I'm so very sorry. Marcus kissed his daughter's forehead. But seriously, what good would that have done? Kim thought about that. Her only response to his question was a shrug. Kim stood in the bathroom, blowing her nose. Her father had left a few minutes ago. She was still struggling to process all he had told her, and she was seriously thinking of retiring to avoid everyone at work. She could do it. Then there was Jeffrey to think about. His funeral. Damn it. This was all too much. She had worked so hard to get to where she was in life. A multi-millionaire at age 30. One of the premier real estate brokers in Greenville, South Carolina. Now she was... what? Some kind of supernatural being? Seriously? She had so many things she still wanted to do with her career, her personal life, and perhaps with Jeffrey. Had her mother experienced similar disappointments? Kim began to cry again, but then Groot came into the bathroom and started whining. That high-pitched, annoying whine. And he pawed at her. What the hell? Kim looked at herself in the mirror. Big eyes, gritted teeth, drooling. Then the clear tears became thick and black. She pointed at herself. I wasn't expecting that. And then the shriek. The veil bloom. Elwyn absorbed the gentle coastal wind as it caressed her face from where she sat within the moors that lined her village. Stray wisps from her plaited, brown, gold-streaked hair broke free as it was picked up by drafts. Distant sounds of the nearby market where she worked were a pressing reminder that she had stolen extra minutes to escape work duties. The red knitted hat protecting her ears played tug of war with the increasing gusts that rippled through the purple heather as she ran back towards the busy village, only looking down to ensure she did not step on any wildlife going about their day. Without warning, a darkness encroached the sky, and a slow, thick mist curled around the young woman's path. Elwyn became a static pillar of fear, watching the tendrils of mist reaching out and parting the heather, beckoning her to change her path, unable to sense beyond the darkness that strangled out the rest of the world. Elwyn tensely focused her vision on what the dark magic revealed. Something was glowing intensely. Elwyn tenderly progressed her nimble feet, feelings of fear and interest arguing with one another. She came upon a ruby-red thorned bush, isolating an intense, majestic amethyst glow beneath it. A faint whisper trickled into Elwyn's ears. The bramble peeled itself, exposing the velvet, petaled, regal-like flower bud, glistening with crystal dewdrops. The tide obeys the moon, a female voice sang, prompting the rose to bloom fully before Elwyn's widened eyes. But not all who guide you wish you to sail true. Before she could repeat the phrase in her head, the darkness sank away into the moors, leaving no trace of its sudden presence. The purple rose remained in Elwyn's hand for only a second before she carefully stuffed it into her pocket as voices came booming from the village, indicating that she had indeed been away too long. Looking and finding no traces of the encounter, she fled for the market. As Elwyn approached her father's stall, she could hear murmurations from the fellow tradesmen. Shouting orders came from customers who bartered prices on fabrics and fresh fish. "Did you see the weather change?" Elwyn hastily asked as she removed her hat and jacket, messily placing them onto the upturned veg crates in front of the stall. "Never mind the damn weather. Get peeling these damn carrots for supper." He tossed a knife to Elwyn and kicked an empty bucket next towards her feet. He was only strict from the grief of losing his love and their newborn daughter in childbirth in recent years. Frustrated, Elwyn perched herself on a stool and began carving at a carrot stump. Even if she told her father, he wouldn't believe her. The rugged orange skin tumbled into the bucket between her feet as her eyes fixed with intrigue on the powerful purple rose that seemed to glisten from the adjacent pocket. "It's a veil bloom, if you were wondering," came a voice full of wisdom and assurance from the front of the tent. Elwyn glanced up to see a tall, thin, yet toned male figure bent over, perusing at the cabbages. His eyes pined towards the purple veil bloom peeping out of the brown jacket pocket. The flower's quiet, luxurious vibrance seemed out of place and would surely be noticed by a knowing collector's eye. Elwyn glanced quickly towards her father, hoping she would not be heard. But he remained engrossed in organizing the stock in the back of the tent. "What do you know of them?" Elwyn stopped peeling and fixed a softened stare at the male. Her wide eyes probably revealed too much as she hoped for answers. Had she been cursed? She submissively looked toward the flower, phantom feeling its hard thorns against her fingers. "Only what the legend states," Vaska answered. "It's like finding a four-leaf clover. Just lucky." He picked up a cabbage and placed it under his arm. "My name is Vask. My family own a stall on the outskirts of the village. In my spare time, I am not ashamed to say that I am an anthophile." Vaska took out a small pocket-sized leather sketchbook. He opened it to reveal small flowers pressed neatly between the pages, each one secured with a small bit of clear tape. Elwyn tentatively leered over to see sprigs of lavender and small bouquets of daisies married together. Between parchment, she returned her eyes to Vaska. His emerald eyes cut sharp against the copper curls that framed his softened jawline. "I am only interested in where you found it, to satisfy the curiosity of a collector." His eyes flashed to meet hers. "I found it in the moors," was all Elwyn offered, indicating that if Vaska was to hold the cabbage in the crook of his arm any longer, he was to pay for it. Embarrassed, he hastily put his hand in his pocket to search for payment. Bringing out 2 silver coins, he placed them on the wooden trade table that bore the produce. "Thank you." Vask smiled as he grabbed 2 more cabbages. "Keep the change. And if you are into books, come by the stall tomorrow." He kept Elwyn's stare as he retreated into the market crowd. "Oi!" shouted Elwyn's father. "Are we getting supper tonight, or do I have to finally skin the cat?" Her father was stood holding up the rear tent flap, peering in with disappointment. Startled, Elwyn kicked the bucket back between her well-worn leather boots and continued to scalp the skin from the carrot, stealing glances at the veil bloom in wonder of its true intentions. The next day, Elwyn laid out the vegetables onto the wooden trade table as her father stacked the emptied crates from behind the tent. After a night of being plagued by the whispers and visions of dark forests, she desired to know more about the veil bloom. The blood-red thorns pressed into the inner lining of her coat pocket, the tips seeping through to the cotton of her work dress, nipping at her as she moved. Glancing down, she could see the rich velvet petals, longingly looking back up at her from within, deep in her coat pocket. She rubbed her thumb over the veil bloom's soft middle. The tightly gathered corolla gently ticked the pad of her thumb. "I'm just going to get a new recipe book," Elwyn called to her father. Before he could battle her decision, she broke out into a purposeful stride. Her jacket rippled against the cool air as her arms straightened through the sleeves. She pulled her collar to secure herself against the chill, weaving in and out of tradesmen setting up their stalls, unsure of the faces that surrounded her in a familiar setee of work. She kept her head low, turning on her heels and accepting defeat, trying to find Vaska. Elwyn began to walk back to the southern area of the coastal market. Smells of fresh fish and spices began to fill her nostrils, reminding her stomach of its emptiness. "I found it," called a familiar voice. Vaska appeared in her eye line as she paused to see him run back into his tent and return with a large, tatted book. "Veil bloom." Vaska turned the book towards Elwyn as her hands held the edges to support its weight with him. "Located in lands of enchantment, it amplifies one's desires and strength, even with madness." Vaska laughed gently as he impersonated a person riddled with madness and unbalance. Elwyn rejected the book by letting go of the worn-down leather edging and taking a step back from Vaska. "It also says it sings lullabies, which probably explains the bit about going mad." Vaska coyly laughed. Elwyn's face turned to deep thought at the young man, voluntarily helping her. "I don't desire anything." She paused, wondering if giving him the whole story would favor her or not. "What does it say about lullabies?" Her voice almost a whisper. The emerald in Vask's eyes began to swirl with intrigue as he gestured for them to go somewhere quieter to talk. The pair sat cross-legged underneath a large oak tree situated on the outskirts of the market. Elwyn's face buried in the book of hidden blooms. each page so thin, almost translucent, gently flapped between her fingertips. It says in the legend that if the flower starts to glow, you become more powerful. Vasca added, as he looked deeply into at the island of dense forest on the horizon, isolated by small ocean waters. The enchanted, banished lands leaked darkness. His soft curls caught the wind, his eyes in a thoughtful trance. Elwyn shuddered at the thought of the flower's magic ending up in the wrong hands. I should get back, Elwyn decided as she stood up, ready to face the wrath from her father upon her return. Elwyn woke suddenly, in the dead of night. Sweat dripped from her brow, her long, brown, damp hair that clung to her neck. "Help us," came a faint whisper. Elwyn held her breath as she looked around for the voice's owner, the vile bloom, picking it up by its thick green stem. The ruby-red thorns pulsated as she brought it closer to her ear. "Help us, Elwyn." It eerily beckoned, suddenly, moving images as if they were her own memories, flooded her mind. She could see a vast forest that crawled with amethyst-colored smoke. A fawn emerged in the clearing, eyes wide with terror, trembling as it proceeded to lie down on the dark moss floor. Elwyn had feelings of blood rushing back to her limbs as she regained consciousness. Her mind lingered with a defiant message. The banished lands needed her help. Her head swiveled around to the oak tree beyond the market border, to see an elbow bent from behind it, as if someone was sat down with their back to it reading. Elwyn gingerly walked over to them, hoping the white cotton shirt belonged to Vasca, and not someone who would alert her father or challenge her in any way. Reassuringly, Vasque sat with the heads of bluebells crowded on the bend of his knee as he pressed them into his sketchbook. He looked up to see a panic-stricken Elwyn. "What's the matter?" His face matched her concerned look. "The veil bloom showed me something," Elwyn bleated softly under her breath. "I don't know the meaning of the vision or the dream," Vasquez started, after hearing the story from Elwyn. He stared again at the island of trees isolated by small ocean waters, wondering if the legend is true of the banished lands. "If we go there, do you think we will die?" Elwyn asked with hope of a good answer. Vasca didn't respond. He continued his longing stare towards the banished lands. "I just know that this dream felt more real than any other I have had," Elwyn continued. "The fawn seemed terrified, not of me, but of something I don't think I could see. I think we should try to help it." Elwyn removed the veil bloom from her pocket. Its petals had begun to wilt at the edges, curling in as if it were ready to die. "What I have done?" Elwyn softly asked herself under her breath. Had she stayed in the market that day, she wouldn't be having nightmares caused by florals. "I don't think it's something that you have done," Vaska replied, as his eyes glinted with what seemed like excitement. "I think it's more about what you could do to help." Once they beached their stolen rowing boat amongst the cold, brown sand on the shore of the banished lands. The atmosphere hung heavy as life drew to a whisper, and then to a flat silence. "What does your love of flowers tell you now?" Elwyn asked Vaska, with a tint of amusement at the moss-strangled rocks that decorated the forest floor. Not even the twigs beneath their feet made a noise as they progressed deeper into the darkness. "Nothing yet," Vaska gently replied, as they descended deeper into the towering forest. Elwyn tripped on a rock, twisting her ankle slightly. "Careful," Vask panted as he grasped a hold of her elbow, prompting a powerful vision into Elwyn's mind, causing her to spiral in between memories, not her own. A hushed murmur echoed in her ears as she saw sights of a large wolf with emerald eyes stalking and hunting on the outskirts of the forest. As if unable to enter beyond the first row of trees, many moons passed in the sky as it returned night after night. A clear voice embedded deep in Elwyn's veins. "The tide obeys the moon, but not all who guide you wish you to sail true." The vision of the wolf disappeared into smoke, shifting into flurries of flashbacks. The first time she met the veil bloom flower, the look in Vask's eyes, as he also saw it for the first time that day in the market, as if he pined for it, she remembered. The book thrust into her face that day in the market, as if Vaska knew she would come looking for answers. The veil bloom let out a breath, glowing intensely in agreement. Elwyn had not realized she was now holding it, squeezing it in her paper-thin hand, seething from an anger rooted deep within. He had led her there, purposefully, knowingly. "Help us," came the wispy echo. It repeated with each turn, louder than the last. More voices adding into the chorus of pleas from wildlife. Elwyn fell to the floor as the visions and voices ripped away from her, breathless and her mind aching. She looked up to see Vask's face of worry. "What did you see?" he hastily asked, his face tense with pressure. Everything," Elwyn tried to continue when a creature in the clearing approached. A fawn. An amethyst smoke seeped in from behind the fawn, encasing everything in its wake in a building chaos. Turning to face the fawn properly, Elwyn could see the thick smoke tendrils once again clearing a path, this time around the fawn, who was whimpering, but showing a quiet strength trying to stand. Elwyn had seconds to think. She turned to Vask. His emerald eyes were gleaming with anticipation at the flower as he turned toward her. "It's working," came Vaska's voice, a rasp with a hint of excitement at the veil bloom glowing intensely. He snatched it from her fingers, contorting his body in obsession and glee. He threw his arms in the air. "I am the most powerful!" But only silence sounded over the whirring mists. Elwyn felt a burning in her veins. Her body acted automatically as she turned to face Vaska, her back to the trembling fawn in protection. The veil bloom turned to ash in Vaska's trembling hand. His face mad. Auburn curls bounced around with every frantic move he made, searching for the bloom. He turned to see Elwyn, her arm outstretched in retaliation towards him. A push at his shoulder from an invisible force turned his face from confused to pure rage at seeing the veil bloom reforming itself in the powerful young woman's pocket, siding with her instead. "Clever girl, but I don't need you," Vaska hissed. "Just the veil bloom now that your kind heart woke it from slumber." His teeth began to form into sharp fangs. His face shifted into a recognizable wolf with emerald eyes. He lunged for Elwyn, jaws agape in blind fury and jealousy. Elwyn darted to the side. A fire of purple light erupted through her veins, streaming out from her fingertips into the wolf's beastly body, knocking him backwards. He steadied himself and leaped high into the air to plant another attack, aiming true to Elwyn and the glowing veil bloom. At once, she coaxed the power from the veil bloom, causing the ground to quake against the sheer force. Gripping against the weight of the power, she lifted and hurled a fatal blow towards the wolf, smashing his limp body against the strongest and tallest trees. Elwyn panted as she looked at the purple illuminations in her veins trickle out and into the fawn behind her. She looked up at the wolf, but only to see his body disintegrate into smoke and disappear into the sky. An escaped curse. Elwyn ran to the fawn, hoping to help it to live, to answer its plea. The soft curve of the fawn's head cupped Elwyn's hand, opening its eyes tenderly. The land around awoke in harmony. The fawn gathered to its feet, bowing proudly to Elwyn, as the gentle black nose touched the floor. A sweep of purple brushed through the land. A once cursed land started to return to life as animals crept out of deep burrows and birds took once again to the sky. The fawn transformed into a majestic stag, concluding the awakening of the misunderstood lands. His aura glowed in the same pearlescent magic that once flowed through Elwyn's veins. She looked down to see her bare arms and back to the stag, who nodded at her before bouncing off into the thriving atmosphere. Smiling, Elwyn knew her calling now was back to her grieving father. She could never leave him on his own. A thorn dug into her side. The veil bloom remained in her pocket, clasped tightly in a sleeping bud. Its messages sang deep in Elwyn's head as she stroked its velvety casing. It was the flower's magic that gave her the power to connect and calm the land. But it was her kind heart that ultimately saved them all. Distorted. I left home 5 years ago. As soon as I crossed that stage, high school diploma in hand, bypassing my peers, swept up by a wave of crying mums and proud grandparents. I was done. The boot of my car held as much of my 18 years of life as I could stuff into 3 boxes and 1 suitcase. I'd armed myself with a bank account full of every tip and paycheck I'd received from my waitressing job and an early acceptance offer from a university 2 states away, as far as I could get from a place I'd once called home. The night before, as my parents sat in some fancy restaurant for a reservation with friends they'd forgotten to tell me about, undoubtedly arguing with each other behind plastic smiles, I packed away my clothes and books and bed sheets in neat little rows until my room was almost barren. Apart from the old wooden furniture, my bedroom was cleaner than it had probably ever been, and I laughed at thinking about how, if the situation was different, it might finally make my mother happy with me. At 10:07 p.m., they arrived home, my father slamming the door as their whisper shouting floated upstairs. I knew they weren't being considerate of the fact that I might be sleeping, but rather they worried about the possibility that a commotion might alert the neighbors, that they would see through the cracks in the foundations of their picture-perfect dream house. They didn't come in to say goodnight. Hadn't since I was 8, and old enough to read myself to sleep. As I pulled out of the parking lot and left my formative school years in the back windshield, I thought about what my parents would tell their friends, the neighbors, the busybodies in the grocery store checkout line. Would they lie and tell everyone I had accepted a scholarship for some prestigious university overseas? Or maybe I'd traveled to Africa to work in humanitarian aid, something they could brag about and say, "She's made us so proud." Possibly, they'd invent a job with NASA or an internship at Google. They hardly knew enough about me to know what I'd actually be studying or what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was sure they wouldn't be bold enough to tell the truth, that their daughter had disappeared without warning while they spent their day in board meetings and having sex with their personal assistants in hotel rooms paid for by their companies. There would be no missing persons report or flyers offering an egregious sum of money in reward for my safe return home. Nothing that would cast a shadow on their spotless reputations. I would fade further into the background of their lives, as if a figment of their imagination, only resurrected when one of their friends spotted me in one of the professionally shot family photos, stilted and artificial, and asked after me. That's if they kept the frames up at all. My parents would have to dig up my coffin from the deepest parts of their memory, plaster a smile on their face, and grit their teeth. They would spin some vague anecdote about speaking to me on the telephone last Tuesday and how well I was doing. And maybe they'd go visit me at Christmas. They'd have forgotten all about me by the time they brought out the first course. I mean, they hardly remembered I existed, even while we lived under the same roof. That's why I was so shocked when they called me one Sunday, 5 years after I left town and never looked back, and asked me to come for a visit soon. I had no idea how they knew my number. I'd changed it after moving and never given them the new one. That's why I didn't respond for almost a minute after hearing my father's voice through the tiny speaker. I almost convinced myself I was dreaming or having a stroke. Maybe I'd temporarily slipped into an alternate reality where it was normal for my father to have my number, to call me out of the blue and invite me over. Anything to explain why the fuck he was calling. There was no special occasion. Nobody was sick and dying. And there was no upcoming birthday to celebrate. They just wanted to see how I was doing and make amends. They missed me, they said, through the crackling of the landline. I wondered if they had finally snapped and gone crazy, if they'd learned a sense of humor and this was some kind of prank. Or perhaps they had early onset dementia and had forgotten that I had never been much more than a roommate they had complained about having to spend their hard-earned money on. I told them I would think about it and immediately hung up. I spent the next 2 days trying to forget about it altogether until I came home from work to a letter in my mailbox, a one-way ticket dated 2 weeks from then, set to arrive at the airport an hour out from the town I grew up in. On the front of the envelope, my address, written in my mother's sloping, elegant handwriting. Nausea settled in the pit of my belly. How did they know my address? I'd not kept in contact with a single person from my childhood. The hairs on the back of my neck tingled as the growing sense of being watched settled into my skin. Then a thought popped into my head. Had they known the whole time? Had they known where I was all these years and never bothered to reach out? Suddenly, I was 12 again and realizing my parents were never going to care about me the way the kids at school were cared for. This confirmed what I had always known. I was alone in this world. It took some deliberating, but I decided I would go. I would see what it was they wanted from me, and if they really had changed. I told myself I wouldn't give in to whatever manipulation tactics they might pull. I would be strong and remain distant. And when it was done, I would demand that they never contact me again. Even still, my bones were heavy with paranoia the following weeks. I elected to hire a rental car to drive from the airport to their house. There was no way I'd give my parents the satisfaction of driving me, of having any modicum of control over me once more. And this way, if I needed to leave, I wouldn't be forced to wait 20 minutes for a taxi. I parked on the street. The house had been repainted a soft eggshell color instead of the previous gray and rows of gardenias lined the fence where there had once been neat box hedges. I breathed deeply through my nose before raising my hand to knock. My mother pulled the door open as my fist made contact with the wood, causing me to stumble back. She must have been watching me from the window. Waiting, she was smiling. That was strange in its own right, but it was weirder because I knew it wasn't my mother's smile. Her smile never reached her eyes. She would never do anything that would cause lines to form on her face. Her smile always gave you the sense that she was laughing at you rather than with you, pitying you. My mother did not smile, but when she did, it was always forced. This was a genuine smile. It was happy. I felt immediately that something was deeply wrong. A shiver ran through my spine. There was something wrong about her face. It was fuzzy around the edges, as if she was wearing a mask. I rubbed at my eyes with closed fists, trying to clear my vision. But the effect remained. I figured I was tired from my flight, but the closer I inspected her, the clearer it became that something was off. It looked as if someone had tried to draw her face as accurately as possible. After taking a long glance at a picture of it, my mother reached towards me with outstretched arms and drew me into an embrace. I stood stiffly, with my arms by my side, trying and failing to remember when she had last hugged me. Surely at some point in my childhood. Definitely not after the age of 10. She invited me inside. This house was nothing like the one I'd left. Cold and sparse, decorated as if a model home. It was warm and filled with color and light. I wondered if somehow my memories of my horrible, lonely childhood had managed to warp my recollection of the house itself. But I knew that wasn't right. This new hallway was illuminated by a warm glow, and funky paintings hung from the walls. The dining table was set with a red gingham tablecloth that my mother would have called tacky, and a vase of sunflowers. In the kitchen, my father took a large tray out of the oven before pausing to take a long pull from the neck of a beer bottle. I had never seen my father drink beer before. He used to say it was the common man's drink, and that real men drank whiskey. He turned to say hello, and where his face had once been clean-shaven and professional, stubble grew freely. Like my mother, something was off, and it wasn't just the facial hair. His nose was smaller than I remembered, eyes just a fraction too far apart. From afar, or at a passing glance, it was the man I'd grown up with, but as he stepped closer to greet me, his features shifted. It was like looking at an optical illusion, and when I changed my gaze, the true image would slip into place. They watched me. To anyone else, it might seem they were worried, for I hadn't said a word since my mother opened the door. But I could see it in their eyes, the suspicion. They were wondering if I'd noticed, waiting for me to say something. I stuttered out empty platitudes about being happy to see them, and they shuffled me over to sit at the table. Dinner was pistachio-encrusted chicken breast served with a peach and goat cheese salad. When my father announced the menu, I stopped short, fork raised halfway to my mouth. My mother was allergic to pistachios. This was a fact she despised, as she perceived any sort of weakness to be a flaw, and my mother was not flawed. I said as much, but my mother just stared at me with an odd look and told me she didn't have any allergies. She never had. And then she went on eating, cutting her chicken into bite-sized cubes and placing them delicately on her tongue, never breaking out in hives or becoming short of breath as her throat closed up. I was beginning to feel as if I was going out of my mind. I managed to stumble my way through conversation, letting my parents do the brunt of the work, barely processing a word they said. I excused myself to my room, citing exhaustion and an early night. My father followed with my bag, and as I reached the top of the stairs and turned right towards my old bedroom, he laughed at me. It wasn't the same boisterous laugh he'd had at dinner when discussing his golfing buddies. It was sharp and croaky, like it didn't belong to him. I hadn't seen my father laugh enough as a child to know which one was more his own. My bedroom was to the left, he said, with a curious look on his face. Don't you remember? And he pushed past me, guiding me down the corridor to a room I knew was not mine. I followed him slowly. Inside the doorway, he dropped my bag, calling good night over his shoulder as he moved back downstairs. I locked the door. The furniture was the same, but there were pictures on the wall I had no recollection of. Myself and my parents at the beach and in the snow and with my grandparents. These were not my pictures. My mother hated the sand, and the first time I'd been to the beach was with some uni friends a year after I left home. I had never met my grandparents, let alone taken photographs with them. They had both died before I was born. I sat down on the bed. It was made tidily, with the same striped sheets I had packed in a box all those years ago. I sat there for hours, listening as my parents cleaned and made their way to bed. When I was sure they were sleeping, I slipped out the door and into the rental car. As I drove to the airport, heart racing against my rib cage, I knew one thing for sure. I was certain that those people were not my parents. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Jessica squints her eyes and bites down on her pinkish lower lip. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Jessica smiles. wrinkles forming around the corners of her mouth. She shakes her head down and chuckles. "Darling, what's the matter? What is going on in that big head of yours?" She gets up from her leather office chair and walks to her husband to squeeze his large, cold hands. Jessica's husband has never been so melancholy on December 24th. "I'm worried," he shares. "About what?" "Tonight." Jessica was alarmed by her husband's words. In the 4 centuries, her husband has been delivering presents and joy to children all around the world. She has never heard him say those words. What is there to worry about? The elves are organized. Everyone has been getting along. The reindeer are so excited for tonight and full of energy. Rudolph's nose is shining brighter than ever. I think we could shut off the headlights on the sleigh to save energy. Jessica, it's not that. Is it him? What? The Grinch? I do not know what he's up to right now. Jessica searches for the answer in her husband's eyes, but all she sees is her reflection. She drops his hands. "Now you are starting to worry me. You need to tell me what is going on," Jessica says sternly. "I simply do not know. I just feel unusual." "Is it me?" Jessica asks. Nicholas doesn't answer. "Mr. Claus? Mr. Claus?" Jeannie the elf asks aggressively. Nicholas perks up from his dazed state and looks around. All the elves have stopped their work activities to observe the overweight man, normally jolly, sulk in his sleigh. The elves exchange hushed whispers, coated in concern. Not only is this moment instilling fear in them, but the Christmas operation is running behind. "Why have you stopped? We need to get going. We need to be in New Zealand in 9 minutes," Nicholas yells. The elves shake at the thunderous volume of his voice and immediately finish packing the last few presents into his enormous red bag and feeding the reindeer their carrots. Nicholas has been delivering presents, or coal for the naughty children, for a few hours now. By the time Nicholas and the reindeer got to Amsterdam, Rudolph's nose was getting dimmer, and he was feeling slight fatigue. But they had to keep going. Nicholas was not singing holiday tunes as they flew in the crisp, frigid air in Croatia. He even dropped the wrong present, a gaming console, in the wrong house in Nigeria, and had to fly back to little Kemi's house to switch it with the correct one, a skateboard. The reindeer could sense the disorganization and gloominess from Nicholas. Nicholas knew that tonight was more delicate than usual because he was making mistakes for the first time in centuries. His stomach was full of nerves and milk and cookies. 11:55 p.m. CST, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Nicholas rolls forward and lands on his feet in an upright position, like an Olympic gymnast. His chunky black boots leave faint imprints on the beige carpet. The Christmas lights are still on inside the Alotzi family home, providing light to guide him towards the Christmas tree. He places 3 gifts: a bicycle for Kechi, 8, a basketball hoop for Leon, 10, and a limited edition comic book for Josiah, 12. Nicholas smiles. A sense of peace washes over him, a feeling he has not felt all day. Josiah is the oldest, and he recently started to lose vision in his right eye. It has changed how he plays with his friends and how he learns his favorite subjects in school. But he was an exceptionally good boy this year. He deserves that comic book. That's what it's all about for Nicholas. Bringing joy to children. Nicholas looks around the cozy living room, looking for cookies and milk. With nothing in sight to quench his thirst or hunger, he walks towards the kitchen. This family is well off, he thinks to himself. Big white cabinets, stainless steel appliances, large square footage, pristine, clean, quiet. Milk and cookies wait for him on the large rectangular wooden dining table. Nicholas sips on the milk. He can see the family's new silver barbecue grill sitting outside the back door through the sliding door windows. The right side of the sliding door looked damaged. The white siding is bent and cracked, so much for pristine. As he put the tall glass of milk down, his head became hot. Sweat started to form from underneath his red hat. Something is not right, he thought. The milk was hot, steaming as if someone had just warmed it up just before he got there. Police! Put your hands where we can see them. Before Nicholas could turn around, he was tackled to the ground by an unknown man. Get off of me! He screams in agony. Nicholas, unable to lift his head to see ahead of him, hears more footsteps. An army of footsteps come from several positions in the kitchen. Doors swing open. Wooden chairs are toppled over. Bright flashlights illuminate his face. Nicholas feels his breath weaken and starts heaving. All right, officer. No need to suffocate him, a voice says. Nicholas feels a weight lift off his back and is finally able to lift his head. Officers dressed in thick, dark-colored bulletproof vests, masks, weapons, and boots surround the kitchen. St. Nicholas, you are under arrest for trespassing, breaking and entering, animal abuse, and violating the labor code. 2 officers appear beside him to bring him to his feet and start to cuff his hands behind his back. These are preposterous claims, Nicholas exclaims. Sir, anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to remain silent. I am not a criminal. I am Santa Claus. Nicholas wiggles frantically in his cuffs. If you arrest me, millions of children will not get their Christmas presents. I need to finish my job. Can I speak to your superior? Who is responsible for placing these charges against me? A sinister silence comes. The officers turn their faces away from the now red-faced Nicholas towards a corner of the kitchen. The pantry, it opens with a creak, and a quiet, cold breeze sweeps through the kitchen. A trapped cry can be heard in the large pantry. Nicholas's eyes cannot believe what he is seeing. A mother, stepfather, and 3 kids, the Alozi family, are bound together, not with the joyful spirit of Christmas, but by dry, brown rope. Their mouths taped shut. Not a word from their lips, but their eyes do the talking. Desperation and fear reeks from the sweat that covers their heads. Nicholas screams and tries to free himself from the restraint of the handcuffs, but the officers hold him back. "I wouldn't try that if I were you," a familiar voice sounds. But Nicholas cannot quite put a finger on it. The unknown figure's boots make loud thuds on the floor as they walk closer to Nicholas. The other officers part themselves like the Red Sea and make way for them. A cap shades her face in the low-lit kitchen, but Nicholas can make out her shiny, blonde hair. "Cindy!" She slowly lifts her head. "Hello, Santa Claus?" "Cindy Lou, what is the meaning of all of this?" Nicholas asks. "Little Cindy Lou, who, from Whoville, sports a black jumpsuit and an unauthorized police badge. Her eyes are black with deceit and evil. A distant image from the small girl who loved Christmas. Cindy, please, remember the day the Grinch stole Christmas? How painful that was for you and your town. Imagine the millions of children experiencing the same thing this Christmas right now. Is that what you want?" Nicholas pleads. Cindy leans closer to Nicholas. "It's not about what I want, Claus. Are these officers even legitimate? Cindy Lou, answer me. And why tie this poor family up on Christmas Eve?" The eyes of the smallest Alozi child, Kechi, beg for freedom. "Actually," Cindy Lou checks her watch, "it's Christmas Day, and it's about what he gets." Nicholas smells a grisly scent, and immediately his eyes open wide. A masked figure appears from a clump of officers. He gently removes his mask and reveals his skin, all green, and teeth, all yellow with termites. "I should have known better," Nicholas whispers to himself. "Merry Christmas, Santa Claus." Nicholas is enraged. Veins start to pop from his neck. Why so sad, Santy? What happened to the holly jolly fat man with a white beard that everyone knows and loves? Let me go, now. No, 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 no can do, Santy. Nicholas uses his large body to push the officers, if they even are real Canadian authorities, off him. They fall to the ground, but Nicholas is still surrounded by several angry officers, ready to take him down. Cindy waves her gloved finger, instructing the officers to pounce on Father Christmas. A struggle ensues, and Nicholas is forced to the ground again. He fights with all his will, yelling and kicking with the most power an almost 2,000-year-old man could. "Stop resisting," one officer demands. "You need to comply, sir," another one says. "Punch his fat belly if you need to. Or even better, kick his head," Cindy commands. Nicholas weakly lifts his head, and his fearful eyes drift towards the vile, green-skinned monster beside Cindy. He shows all his 55 crooked, revolting teeth. A bad banana. Suspect has his hand on a weapon, the monster shouts. Nicholas furrows his bushy eyebrows in confusion. He thinks to himself, I do not have my hand on a green Glock 17 appears between Nicholas's eyes, and it fierce with a deafening rumble. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas, the Grinch hollers. Pebble, rain pattered against glass. Burnt beans overtook the scent of fresh bread. Voices overlapped as stories were shared and gossip was spilled. The game played on the TV. We were winning. The buzz in the air was almost intoxicating. Even the rain couldn't dull it. Gray stared at the brown liquid. Steam rose, collecting into beads of sweat as his face hovered over the cream-colored mug. Blonde curls, curtained, flushed skin, and bleeding lips as his teeth pulled at the delicate skin. He was in his own air. The buzz flowed around him. His ears were stuffed with the nectar of the past. It seeped out, dripped down his arm, burned through his skin, revealing scars that were hidden with years of neglect. Nails cracked as he dug into the wooden table. His mind swirled. The nectar was thick. It was creeping through the crevices of his head, consuming thoughts he pushed down and forcing him to face it. Metal filled his mouth as Gray bit down harder on his lips. Pain filled his face, and the sob got stuck in his throat. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the mug and took a sip of the bitter liquid. It stung at his bruised lips, but the taste was welcome. A deep breath led to long sigh, releasing tension as he slumped over the table. Pebble? He clinched his eyes closed as his mind flooded. The bricks of the dam slammed and slammed against the limit of his conscious as the memories flooded over him. Gray scrambled across the sticky ground. He gripped at the blood-soaked hoodie, pulling the small body into his arms. His fingers left trails as he rubbed at the bruised skin, hoping his touch would wake him up. Pebble, come on. What he thought was a yell was nothing more than a cracked whisper. Shaking hands gripped at curls that were just like his, just a bit brighter in color. He just kept repeating himself, holding the one good thing in his world, rocking him back and forth like he had to do to help him fall asleep just a couple years ago. A few feet away, smoke rose from the fifth cigarette lit today. It found its home between cracked lips. Lips that never once said anything that portrayed an ounce of care. Those lips belonged to a woman of dirty beauty. Beautiful blonde curls that have been passed along for generations framed a pretty pale face that was stressed by a chosen sickness. She stared at the scene, the bodies that were her offspring, at least by the doctor's words. But just cause the doctor said it doesn't mean she cares for it. The law forces her hand, forces her to obey her parental expectations, but it can't make her look at them with anything but an icy indifference. That indifference made her not care when they cried, when they needed to be held, when they needed someone to praise them, when they won, and support them when they fell. That is why, when her youngest was beaten with vase after vase until the glass shards impaled him because he whined too much, she didn't move a muscle. One less expense. Tears were dripping into his coffee, little splatters staining his clenched hands. He took one and bit on it, holding inside his screams as what happened just a few hours ago replayed. Stepping inside the decade-old home, the wood creaking with every step, the excitement he felt with Deku swinging in his pocket, imagining the look on Pebble's face as he held his favorite character in his hands. Then the way his soul dropped into the pit of his stomach. How his vision blurred until the only thing he could see was his little brother laying on the smoke-infested rug. His blood making it an even darker shade of black. The glass fractures, creating a mosaic of different colors that flickered in the light of the dusty swing lamp. Knots formed at the bottom of Gray's stomach. It burned. It hurt. The more he pushed it away, the more it forced itself forward. Their mother sitting there, watching, dusting the ashes off her pants. Their father's snores, traveling from down the hall. He bit into his skin until it split. Luckily, his shirt was black. No one could see the blood that was making it stick to his chest. Just the dirt that's layered on top of it. He couldn't leave his brother laying there. Someone had to bury him. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. Gray turned his head, blood trailing down his chin. "Are you okay, honey?" It was a middle-aged lady. Her hair was thrown into a tight ponytail that made her sharp features pop out even more. He licked his sore lips. Looking down, he had bit into the white meat of his hand. Blood trickled down his skin and dripped onto the table. Puffy eyes, blood-tinted skin and lips, dirt-stained clothes. Gray knew he looked a mess, swallowing his answer. His voice probably wasn't going to work anyway. He grabbed his coffee mug and walked right past her. Curious eyes probed at him as he walked towards the glass doors. Someone behind him was asking him to wait. But he didn't listen, or he couldn't hear. Either way, he walked straight into storm, the rain soaking his body in just a few minutes. Puddles splashed, cars honked, wet grass coated abused shoes. Gray let his feet lead the way. They brought him to the park. It was empty, of course. He climbed onto the playground, crawling his way into the little tunnel. the one place that was still dry. Somehow, he was still holding on to the mug. He took a sip. It tasted like brown water in the tube, surrounded by the rain cascading down. He let himself cascade. Sobs spilled out until his whole body shook. His hands not able to find the right place to stay. He kept trying to stick them in his pockets, but then he remembered Deku wasn't there. It was tight in Pebble's hand. He gripped his hair, his scalp protesting. His mother's nonchalant figure, his father's peaceful rest, Pebble's warm body lying there, still. It lit something in him. Everything he was holding inside, all that he kept hidden, to keep a smile on his little brother's face, all he dealt with to protect him, everything he never gained that he gave. His sobs trailed off into a coughing spill. His mind broke. The pain spilled over, the cuts, the bruises, the memories. The mug cracked in his tightening grip, his shaking hands from the cold, or his anger he didn't know. With a crack, the mug spilled into his lap, and a deafening scream spilled from his lips, the force bruising his already sore throat. It filled the tube. The storm swallowed it, taking his pain into its grasp as his vision blurred with red. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.